Guys, so welcome to episode 3 of the Physical Freedom Podcast. I'm here with my friend Surya. He's visiting us from India. I like having a talk, just a regular conversation, right? I feel like that's the best way to do podcasts. A lot of the best podcasts right now are mostly just talking, you know?
Yeah.
I'm generally curious about some of the things that you teach, you know? So,
Yeah.
And we're generally curious about each other, so it's always good to have that engagement, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm truly grateful for the trust.
Yeah,
And I'm super excited. Let's go.
Awesome, brother. What are some of your favorite podcasts? Let's get into that first.
I think I obviously listened to like Joe Rogan a lot
Yeah.
before. And I think London Real in the past, like 2016, 17, I used to listen to that a lot. I found out a lot of my teachers through that, or like influences through that. Brian Rose. So that was something I was like, I think the conversations at that time at least used to go quite deep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those two for now. And there's also like other teachers and stuff, kind of hard to get, but they're more on the receiving end of podcasts. And I also love like Paul Chek's podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like Ben came up with a really nice podcast as well, a
Yeah.
series like a few months ago, last year or something.
Yeah.
So all of that has been like pretty sick. Yeah. So right now I'm actually like in a state right now where I'm trying to not take more and more information.
Yeah, that's
and just trying to be like, okay, these are the people I'm working with, these are the perspectives I'm working with, and just try to like dive deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not
Smart.
as much listening to podcasts and stuff like that. Just watching random memes now and then.
That's good. That's good. You've had a hell of a journey. This journey of healing your body to a coach that's helping lots of people, you know, heal their own bodies. And I think that's one of the best things you can do is like heal your body first and then gently help others do the same.
Yeah.
Right. 2014, you said you had your first knee surgery or knee pain?
Yes. Right. So I can share my story.
Yeah.
Essentially, I was like through like school and college, I used to play football. Let's call it football, the right way. And essentially, I used to play football and used to run. Started exploring fitness, going to the gym, doing push-ups and pull-ups and stuff. This was like 15, 16, 17, 18 and stuff. And loved movement, but was never very good at it. Right? I used to show up a lot, but in terms of my performance and everything, just about made it to the college team somehow for a couple of maybe like a year and a half or something.
That's awesome.
So and then like once I graduated from college, I did a trip to Everest Base Camp, did a hike there. It was an absolutely mind-blowing experience. It was my first solo trip. And then I did a 4-day trip to Gulmarg, which is like a ski destination. And then after that, shortly after I moved to London, and over there basically started, like the first trip I did was a surf trip.
Right.
I went straight to like Newquay in England, and then I went to Portugal, and I started exploring surfing, and then also delved into like boxing classes. So this whole world of movement opened up at that particular time, like rapidly fast. Like you can surf, you can climb, you can jump, you can dance, you can do all these incredible things with your body. And obviously we wanted to do it all, right? You want to be someone who can do it all and be like a master of all of them, right? And just like an expansive experience, right?
Yeah.
But then there was also another story I was writing where I was progressively, consciously or unconsciously destroying myself, right? And just from my knee standpoint, like 2011, which when I was in university, I tore my left knee ACL completely.
Wow.
And then had a surgery. Then within like 8-9 months or something, I was back playing sports. In a couple of years of that, I did that trip to Everest and
how
like
old were
almost
you?
forget about it. That was like when I was, I would say 19.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So had my ACL surgery, recovered from it, and 21 I did that trip to base camp, and like within a couple of years, I forgot about it that even happened.
Wow.
And then 2014, I had a situation where I tore my right knee ACL completely, and this was in a football accident. I don't want to call it an accident, we'll speak about that later, but then happened in football, and then had a surgery, but that surgery wasn't done properly, right? And it took me a couple of years to find out that the surgery wasn't done properly, and the graft had failed. Right.
Yeah.
So I started the rehab. It didn't feel right from the outset. And there was this lingering pain, instability, irritation, all this stuff was going on. And also there was other aspects that we'll cover later maybe that was not really going well in terms of like where I was progressing in my journey. Right. I was in a lot of stress due to different factors. And essentially, so that surgery hadn't been done properly in 2014. I also maybe screwed up the rehab a bit, but I'm pretty certain the surgery was definitely not done properly. And then took me a couple of years to realize. In 2017 is when I realized that surgery hadn't been done properly.
Wow.
And then I went to a top surgeon in India, like literally like top 5 in India, looking by reputation, and they refused to operate on my knee. They said that, listen, right now you can walk, so why do you want to mess it up further? I would not operate on you, right? So they just said that I won't operate on you. If you want, we'll just go in, just touch up your meniscus and stuff, maybe take some debris out, but we'll not operate on you. But I wasn't willing to let go of this in my early 20s. I was like, then I started to look up like who's the best surgeon in UK who can operate on me. And I found out about this gentleman. His name is Andy Williams. He works with Premier League athletes. I think he operated on Didier Drogba or someone from Chelsea as well. I don't remember who it was. Very well respected surgeon. So I wrote to them and be like, can you do the surgery on me under the NHS, which is their insurance? And they said that they don't operate under the NHS, they work privately. So I found out who's the best person they would recommend if I had to get a surgery done. And they told me go to Simon Ball. And he's absolutely one of an elite surgeon, like exemplary professional. And when I met him, like did private consultations with him. And I spoke to him about my situation. He said that the best way to do this is to do it in 2 stages, where they go in, take the junk out. And what had happened with my knee was that it was a double bundle ACL, meaning that you put they used to drill 2 holes next to each other. They thought it increase the stability, but in fact what would happen is it would not. It was something they don't do much anymore. So those 2 holes had collapsed and they'd become one bigger hole.
Wow.
So they could not use that hole. So what they had to do is go in the first surgery, take it out. And essentially they had to fill that up with donated bone graft, someone else's bone powder, fill it up, let it sit for 6 months, and then they do the ACL revision, which is where they use the quadriceps graft, and they put that graft in, and that was my second surgery. So in 2018, I had a 2-stage ACL revision, and the stage 1 was taking the stuff out and filling it with donated bone graft, and the second was the ACL revision, where they essentially did the quadriceps, right? And obviously that gets done, but within a month, I was on the table again. And that was because the wound had gotten infected. The surface wounds had gotten infected. And my surgeon was concerned that maybe there could be something going on inside as well. So I went under the wire or under the table again. And was on the table again. But thankfully, it was only the surface. So they just went in, they flushed the joint out, they removed any debris and stuff. And after that was when all the surgeries were done, right? That was 2018, like November or something, right? And from that place, I was able to, I worked with a very top physio. His name is John Green, exemplary professional again. And he works with elite professional athlete, and he collaborates with Simon Ball and Andy Williams and surgeons like that. So if you're in the UK, there's probably not many better physios than that, right? At least from my understanding, right? So someone I deeply respect as well. So I worked with them for 6 months. I started to see my breakthroughs. I was able to do some hikes and everything as well. But again, the surgery was also very complex, right? So whenever I would start to get into any kind of plyometrics, I would get stabbing pain in my knee and stuff like that. So there was a point around 2019, 20 and stuff where I'd kind of hit an impasse. Like I could do certain things, but it was not that, there were some complications, let's just say. And it is not to say anything about the physiotherapeutic process or the surgeon and everything. They did a fantastic job. It is more that it was just the complexity of the situation, right? So then essentially all that happened, and then that's the point. I was back in India by that time. I left my job as a consultant, and essentially that's the time I was had hit an impasse, and I started to explore ATG. And obviously you and I are connecting thanks to Ben Patrick, who's created this incredible community, and obviously we're going to dive deeper in that. And essentially so I started looking into his stuff and be like, let me start practicing, and started to sled say 5 to 6 days a week, 30 minutes. Me and my friend of mine used to push cars 6 days a week during the time of COVID, and we didn't have a sled. I've taught so many people the sled, but for the first 2.5, 3 years I didn't have access to a single sled. I used to just push cars, and it just worked well for me. And sometimes even alone, right? There wouldn't be nobody, and I would just push the car, and then in a busy Delhi street, I can show you a video. I'd push the car and then run, fix the wheel, and then go back and push the car again. And you do what you have to do, right? And I could see that it was coming together. Not in the sense that I could sense that this stuff is working. Some of these things are working, but it's not that I had immediate breakthroughs with this approach I took, right? Because one thing is there's a part of it where I was again very aggressive with the rehab, and we'll cover why of that later and stuff. But fundamentally, 2020, I start to see that, okay, this stuff is working on the tips and the calf raises and the step ups and everything. And I started to see some kind of okay, this is helping for sure, right? And it's just started chipping away at a craftsman. Now, 2021, you can't write this stuff, is that I thought that, okay, at least I'm on the tail end of all the major damage. Is I was standing in shallow water, I was going into surf, and nobody would believe this because thankfully my mom was there. Otherwise, nobody would believe this after all the damage. They were like, you did something, but I didn't do anything. It was I was just standing in shallow water. Friend of mine, he's a surf instructor. He said, can you help out in the surf class? So I just came in, and he essentially said, like, can you help out in this class? So my job was to basically stand there and help someone out into the water again so that they can push them in. So this person who was coming in, he was supposed to bring the board in front of me so that I could lie down on it, I can push him on. But he turned the board at the last minute. The board became like a front of a truck. It hit me on the outside of the knee, and I tore my MCL almost to the bone. Right? So that was a major MCL tear. And that was like absolutely gut-wrenching to deal with, having had all these different challenges and stuff. And essentially like, and that is something I've worked on healing naturally, right? I've not gotten any surgeries done. And even if I wanted to, who's going to operate on me, right? So that was the thing. And with my right knee as well, as I started to explore deep knee bend position. So the right knee is the one which had multiple surgeries, and the left is the one with the unoperated MCL tear. So this multiple knee surgeries, again, what would happen is as I would explore deep knee bend positions, my knee would dislocate. So I will get into even an unloaded Caesar position, I would get into a deep knee position, I will just give way. And I would injure the meniscus more. And that happened around 15 times, I would say, from like 2021 to like 22 or something, in those like year and a half. And every time it would happen, I'm like, what is even happening? And you always go down that thought that you need another surgery. And these are things that fears that everyone has to work through. Right, and then even when I came to ATG a couple of years ago, when we actually met for the first time, I was like in a very big dilemma. Is like, do I need to like invest more in this process? Like maybe it's like obviously Ben's done incredible that you see results all through, but maybe I need something different, right? But then I made a leap of faith and to come here, and obviously I learned a good few perspectives and principles from here, and also some movements from here, it's in 2022 that I actually saw my first clear breakthrough. And I clearly remember that moment, and after this I'll shut up, I know I've been talking for a while.
No, I'm listening, it's really good.
Was essentially that I was actually in Seattle with one of my best friends, his name is Shashank, and we went for a hike, and I didn't even feel like going for that hike that day. And I was like, okay, let's just go. I went for the hike, and on the way down, I just was like suddenly felt like running, right? And I hadn't thought of running or anything like that for a while, right? I'd just been doing these movements in training. I would go for a surf, maybe I could sprint on the beach a little bit, and not like, it wouldn't feel right always. And I just felt like running, and that entire way down, I just basically ran the whole way down, and there was no pain in my knee. And that was the first moment in 8 years, you can say, where I had was like, this is like actually working.
Wow.
Right, so from 2014 to 22, I don't think there was a single moment where I felt like I had a breakthrough. And essentially, but that 22 moment when I came down that hike is when I could really feel it. Being like, okay, this stuff works, and I'm having a clear breakthrough in terms of that stabbing pain going away from the knee, the stability in the knee, all of this stuff coming together. And that was my breakthrough moment. That gave me a lot of faith. It's not that I've not had challenges since, or I've not been working on things with the complexity of the meniscus tears on my right knee and the dislocations and the unoperated tears. Obviously, as a craftsman, I'm still working on it. But that was a clear moment for me to be like, okay, I understand this stuff now, right? And I think one of the things I want to really emphasize before we is the fact that a lot of times you try to put timelines on the healing journey, right? We're like, okay, I want this to happen by this date. Okay, surgery happens in a year, so maybe like after 5 surgeries, I should be back in action in like 1.5 years. But the clock keeps ticking. It's like 1.5, 2, 3, still in pain. And it's almost like when that moment comes, sometimes it's like you don't even expect it, right? It comes together at a moment you don't even expect. And I can assure you, and a lot of people who might be in pain also, like I had conversations with them, I keep telling them this story. Reason is that the moment you have that kind of a moment, all that pain and suffering that you had in the last 8 years, a few years and stuff, that just becomes a breath. And I know how much I suffered in that time. I don't mean to be, but I'm a pretty sore loser. I could not just let go of the idea, why the hell can I do this stuff, right? Why is it so hard? And the fact that when that moment came, all of that pain and suffering from the last 8 years or whatever just became a breath, right? And it's very important to understand that when you have that moment, then everything washes away. But if you keep chasing and you keep pushing with an agenda, then you never have that moment. And that thing just becomes heavier and heavier over time. So just some food for thought there.
Wow. I mean, you clearly had a lot of faith anyways. You already were pursuing it for 3 or 4 years, like bulletproofing your body, getting better, and even longer than that, because I'm sure you were doing plenty of physiotherapy from the time it was 2011.
From 2014 to 22.
Right.
Like even now, it's just basically just like chipping away at it at some level or the other.
Yeah, that's huge. So how many surgeries in total?
So 5 surgeries. That one was a minor touch-up, the debridement surgery. But like 4 ACL reconstruction surgeries. One is a debridement surgery associated, so 5 surgeries. And major MCL tear on my left knee. And the meniscus tears and the dislocations on my right knee and deep knee bend positions, right, which I've solved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was your emotional state during that time?
As I said, I took it like a sore loser. So there are some people who just like brush it away, and I've had chats with those kind of people who just like have a certain like say aura of just like pleasantness around them.
Yeah.
But I had a very intense energy in that, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't just let go.
Right.
So even now, maybe there's some parts of me that's unable to let go, right? In terms of like being like, okay, this is good enough, right? So that is there, and I think like it's obviously evolved over time, it's improved over time. But as I said, I think just not being able to give up on this stuff and like a sense of heaviness that is this how life is going to look throughout, that was the undercurrent. And that's just me being completely transparent. I wish I was the cool guy who could just be like just doing shit, living life and be in a lot of pain and discomfort. But I did like my life revolved around this for the longest period of time. I stopped various aspects of my life, like even my career and stuff. Even like as a coach, I held my teaching back to a great degree because I wanted to really get it to a point where I felt authentic as a teacher, right? So there's a lot of things I held up in my life to be able to like kind of like crack the puzzle of what I had to do.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just me as a person. Right? Someone else, for a lot of other people, is just knee pain.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just happy with what they have. But I wish that was me.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you, sharing your story because it's very powerful, right? So like people that are watching this, like, what would be your one message to them, like if they're going through something similar? Because the way I see it is it only resonates with me as like there is hope. Like even if you're going through like the hardest time, because I can't imagine going through what you went through, to be honest with you. I never did. I had a little bit of pain. I was lucky enough to find this stuff before it got any worse,
Yeah.
So what would be the one thing that you would want to tell them, And obviously you're a coach, so there's a lot you can, and we will go more into that later. But if you're one-to-one with a friend or family member who's
maybe I'll say
going through
something maybe a little bit more poetic that I wrote a few years ago.
Yeah.
Keep listening to the whispers of your soul. You'll find what you're looking for. Will always be loved, and will never walk alone.
It's really good. Yeah, I like that. That's really good. And that takes me into the little stillness practice we just went through. Right before this, Surya was kind enough to take me through one of the stillness practices that he takes his clients through. Because a lot of this healing is not only just a physical, it's not just the movements that you go through. A lot of it is mindset, a lot of it is spiritual. Without getting too much into that, it's more like, the feeling and realizing, blending in the movement and with the stillness, right? This was what you were explaining to me.
Yes.
Can you go into some of that and why you apply that practice with your
Absolutely.
clients?
So what we covered was a stillness practice, and I took you through a guided practice where we brought the awareness first to the breath, then we took it to a sensation that was a little bit uncomfortable. And obviously when I do workshops, it's centered around knees, so we call it Bulletproof Your Knees for Life. So we focus the awareness on the knees, then we dive into one of the sensations in one of those knees and observe that just the way it is without trying to fix it, without trying to change it. And then we start to zoom back and finishing off with the body scan, right? And as I said to you, is the fact that fundamentally, we have these two forces that we can work with in our movement journey, in our healing journey. It's the movement perspective and it's the stillness perspective. These are two forces you can work with, right? So movement is essentially transformation. Everything that we cover in all our practices as a coach, as a teacher, or anyone taking any action in their lives towards anything is basically movement, right? You take this grass and you pluck it, that's movement. You take a deep breath, that's movement. You hold a fart, that's movement. You hold someone's hand, that's movement.
Yeah.
And you turn your head like this, that's movement. To like pursuing a goal, to having like trying to cultivate a certain mindset, to moving away from something in your life, to build a relationship. All of this is movement, right? And there's nothing wrong about it. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's a life well lived, but it's important to acknowledge that our entire life is designed around that. From morning to night, we are trying to pursue something for the want of something greater, more, different, or something that you want to move away from. And that's beautiful, but that's what it is. The other side of the coin is the stillness perspective, is the fact that here we are right now, experiencing this, and there is no need for me to change anything. There's no need for me to fix this, because what is happening is beautiful. So I could have the shittiest experience. I could have the most incredible experience. I could be lethargic. I could be tired. I could have all the spectrum of experiences. I could be in a lot of pain, but this is happening in this moment. and it is okay just the way it is. But that has to be practiced. And
Right.
that is the stillness perspective, right? Movement is going from state A to state B, but inherently, you're saying that you don't want state A for whatever reason, right? You're saying that what I have right now, I want something different, more, less, whatever. The stillness perspective is what I have right now is enough.
Yeah.
So when you stretch yourself thin in both these different perspectives, then you have something potent, right? Where you're able to relentlessly pursue something to the fullest extent, but yet be able to be like, whatever I have is completely okay, right? So we were trying to practice that in the context of our body, in the context of our sensation, and be like, hey, this is uncomfortable right now. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to change it.
Right.
Let me just experience that for a little while and then carry on.
Right. So that awareness, that experience that leads to acceptance, right, is kind of like the goal of that.
Yes. So the word acceptance, now I'm getting a little bit philosophical here.
Yeah,
It's like I'm just sharing
everything, yeah.
is the fact that even acceptance is one of those things where you want a certain outcome. I'm not saying that's not what the outcome we want. We want that. But the way you pursue that in the practice is that whatever is happening, you just experience it. So it's not even about accepting it or not accepting it. Because
Right.
accepting is enforcing a certain state over there.
Yeah.
Right?
That
So
makes
you're like,
sense.
okay, this is happening. Can I just observe that?
Right.
And the moment the awareness shifts, you try to bring it back. So you're obviously practicing with great intent. But when you look back on that practice, like you had a moment where you got up suddenly because there's a bug biting you.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But I'm
Yeah.
saying you could have had that moment where in those 10 minutes, you got up maybe 15 times and fidgeted and moved. Or in those 10 minutes, you were completely still and like nirvana. But I would say when you look back on both these practices, from a stillness perspective, it was what it was.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. So it's more of state of being.
Exactly.
And awareness and practicing your attention, as most meditation is, right?
Exactly.
I really like that practice for an SDR. Now, you also shared with me like why you do this for your clients and like how you like to introduce this into their daily lives. Can you go into that? as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of the students I work with is that they come to me because they have some kind of a pain, right? Some kind of pain, right? And we discussed this as well, is that pain is a very complex phenomenon. But one of the things it most definitely is, it is a cry for help from our bodies or maybe something deeper.
Right.
And what we do is the moment we experience pain, any kind of pain, and I'm guilty of this too, is we want to change it, we want to fix it, we want to bottle it, we want to avoid it, escape it, we'll floss it, we'll do the sledding, put it in ice buckets, look up workshops, or we'll just gloss out on our phones. It's just like busy in other aspects of our life. And what I'm inviting to consider in all my workshops and everything is the fact that yes, you're in pain right now, but let's just experience it just the way it is, without trying to change it, without trying to fix it, just for a little while. Maybe it's just 2 minutes before you go into all the fixing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like 100 hours over 3 years, or like 1,000 hours over 10 years, whatever it is, right? You keep coming back to like, this is where I am, this is what I'm experiencing. And you start the healing journey or the movement journey from there. And maybe 100 times out of 100 for your knee pain, you might have needed that ice pack, or you might have needed to sled, or you might have needed to go have that surgery. But by coming back to yourself, you're starting from where you are as opposed to an agenda. And when you practice this over multiple years, not like over weeks and months, over multiple years, it kind of like ties things together in a way that I can't explain. So this has been a connecting thread in my healing journey where, because I was navigating chronic pain as well, and we'll cover that later, is that I was taken to a place that the only thing I had as a practice was stillness, that all I could do was be still with the pain.
Right.
And I feel I couldn't have pulled the resources and like drawn the experiences and the teachers and the perspectives I had to get to where I have gotten now without that stillness. So when I look back, the stillness is the connecting thread. So now how do you practice that? One of the things that I came up with myself and essentially is this practice of microdosing stillness. And this is my small contribution to this field. I call it relative stillness. And it's this practice of microdosing stillness multiple times in a day in very small doses. So anything longer than a minute, you just take a time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, set a timer or just like that, and just be completely still. Right, just for a minute. You can do it eyes open, eyes closed. You can do it with your head turned like this or spine turned like this, observing the breath or looking at something outside.
Yeah.
Just pick a particular sensation or a position, just be completely still and observe it. And then once that time is done, you carry on with your day just the way it is. what happens is, because you're doing it multiple times a day, now you're creating a thing where you're going from movement to stillness to movement to stillness to movement to stillness, as opposed to movement to escaping into our phones and just like checking out, and movement to escaping into our phones and checking out. And I'm guilty of this more than anyone. So I feel a little bit like, say, disingenuous speaking about this, but since you asked the question, I have to say, is that you're starting to create this process of movement to stillness to movement to stillness, and I feel it's a good way to approach life in general, right? To bring in that stillness culture where it is okay to be still, right? And this again is drawn from some of my teachers as well. I think Ido mentioned this as well, Ido Portal, and also obviously I've had experiences of like going to Vipassana, working with the Isha perspective, all these different spiritual journeys, energetic practices that I've looked into. I found that the stillness is the connecting thread between them all. So this is a good way to integrate this into your practice.
Absolutely,
And another point, just to close off, is the fact that, like for example, we discussed that a lot of times people have their energetic practices, right? Maybe it comes from religion, maybe it comes from a spiritual process that they learn, a yogic technique, or a shamanic technique, whatever that may be. And we get up in the morning or in the evening, we take out our 45 minutes and we are perfectly working on that quality and that essence, right? But then it's almost like you went to the gym and you did all this bulletproofing stuff and you got these strong, resilient joints. But let's say you build the strong, resilient body structures and everything, but you never went out and ran after that bus, climbed that tree, picked up and played with your kids, picked up a new sport, or went tried dancing or going surfing. Are we really practicing this quality of strength and bulletproofing? We are not, right? It's just like packed away in the corner. It's the same thing with these energetic practices, that whatever we do in the morning, we expect it to stick at like 7 p.m. When we did it in the morning, we're expecting it to stick at 7 p.m. when you're already late to go home and there's all these commitments, frustrated, the knee hurts. That's when you need to practice. So this is a great way where you can maybe have a structured routine in the morning or in the evening where you spend maybe 30, 45, 1 hour, whatever it is, to work on the energetic practices, but spending a few minutes throughout the day, you're starting to weave in that quality into real life moments, like holding someone's hand, looking in someone's eyes, right? Just being still, like before a meeting or after a meeting, or even being still staring at your phone, right? And all of these different possibilities, even mid shit, right? You can practice these standing on the edge of a crane, right? Just like having ice cubes in your mouth. All these different possibilities, these are all frames in life, right? And all we do is practice stillness like this. And I'm saying there are all these frames in life where you can actually be like practice stillness in. So here you're creating these moments,
right?
These additional frames in your life and experientially seeing where you are. And that's, I feel, has been quite an interesting exploration for me.
I feel like it's a really powerful way to apply stillness into people's lives, like microdosing awareness or stillness practice, right? It's kind of like what you're thinking. Of applying. I think that's a powerful application, especially for people who don't already practice the 30, 40 minutes a day. And even for the people that do, it's really useful. It seems like a lot of the processes for achieving our goals, right, is bringing attention to a certain thing, right? And there's these weapons of mass destruction everywhere, right? Like you mentioned, our phone, the media, TV, movies, even entertainment books are kind of like these things that distract us from centering our attention or our focus on specific things. So when you use that practice of awareness to bring attention to, let's say, the pain, for example, that's a great first step. Acknowledge, and then that'll help you kind of bring things into alignment for how to treat the problem, right? And I feel like that's a lot of what you did, right? In your own way, where the only thing you could do was kind of like bring your mind's attention to it, and then you were at the same time, I'm assuming, wishing that it was gone, right? And then with that wish, if you look back, 10 years ago, when you were first making that wish, a lot of that came true. Not in the way you expected it, but you asked the universe for a solution to it, and here you are, right?
Yes.
And there's this quote, I don't remember who it's from, but maybe we can look this up later. It's all of men's problems stem from not being able to sit in a room still for more than 5 minutes, And that's a really good one. And another one that I thought of while you were talking about this, I was listening, but I did think about this, because Ben says this quote is, pain is your body sending you a communication. So are you going to listen to that communication and treat it, or are you going to ignore it and stow it away?
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. And there are certain moments of time where we need to ignore that pain as well. But generally speaking, it's a good way to approach it, where you want to be aware of certain things and
Yeah.
then make a conscious choice as to what you want to move towards.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And I like what you said about, applying it, right? Being an athlete and trying to do things that challenge your body in bulletproofing, but also in stillness, right? Like feeling things more and like taking that time to like just sit still and kind of feel into your body or whatever you're feeling at the moment, right? And I feel like that's really applicable for little things. I feel like I already practiced that a little bit and just like tasting my food,
Yeah.
or like smelling, like coffee in the morning, or like being in the ocean and just like taking a moment to like see how beautiful it is and like feeling the air breeze. These little things add up a lot, and really help kind of improve your how you enjoy life, your enjoyment of life.
And you're way ahead of me on that one. Like, for example, one of the things, like if you see, I've never spoken about nutrition, and that's a rabbit hole that I could go down on, and I've done a lot of like explorations in that. But the reason I don't speak about it is I made a commitment to myself that till I fix me chewing my food like properly, not being distracted by the phone or like looking at stuff, or like not like until the day I chew my food properly, I am not going to like talk about nutrition, even like put my exploration on the pause, because if the basics are off, if you're just not even present with your food, like what are you like really doing? Right. So, and the first thing when it comes to like digestion and stuff is to be basically like taking that experience and being like, hey, I'm chewing this, and you want to have that sensory experience with the food, and it's a critical part of digestion. So I came to a conclusion that I'm not going to speak about nutrition till the day I actually like fix that, right? In terms of like as a coach as well, or teach it as well, right? So you're ahead of me on that one in terms of like really like trying to integrate these things. Yeah, absolutely. So I respect you for that.
Yeah, well, we have always respect, brother. We have different practices when it comes to food, right? But that's one thing we can agree on is like enjoying it, and like actually taking your time with it is a big part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, and I think that, like I said, it helps you practice stillness. So one thing I wanted to ask you though, so like you had a big journey from 2011 to 2022, right? When you were finally felt like you were breaking through with it. And last time I saw you was around 2022, right? The HCG Expo.
And that moment in Seattle happened right after the Expo.
Oh, wow.
So even
That's
in the
amazing.
Expo, like for example, I didn't attempt the split squats in my right knee because I was like the knee would dislocate and stuff. So so I worked with the constraints of what I had, but it's actually happened after. So it's quite beautiful, Yeah,
it's amazing. So you made a breakthrough with an in-person trainer, right? Or like Ben there in person.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I want to share here, because obviously we met through Ben, is the fact that Ben was very gracious with this time. I had to got to have lunch with him and everything as well, like last 2 years ago. And one of the things was that on the last day before I was leaving, I actually Ben invited me to watch him shooting videos. It was basically him, Brendan, and his mother Celia. And I just came to understand like how this thing works. He appreciated that I came all the way, and he wanted to like give me some time. And so I went and observed them, and this is a moment I could never forget. It's like I tell this to so many people. It's like so this was the moment, like they were shooting a video on sprinting. So Brendan, Ben, and Celia were like, the idea was to like warm up and then sprint through, and they were trying to connect that with the practices, ATG practices. And what happens is that they warm up, do some backward walking, jogging and everything. And then Ben sets up the camera, and he asks Celia to just sprint down, like maybe like 50, 30 meters or something. Right? So just sprints down. And he's like,
which is amazing, by the way. She's 70.
Yeah, she is. She was 67 or something at the time, and she's now 70.
Wow.
And I was like, obviously, it was mind blowing. But then Ben said, take a break. I couldn't get the camera right or something. I need to reshoot this. Take a couple of minutes, and then we'll reshoot this again. Right? Catch your breath. She's like, no, I don't need to. I'm ready to go again now. When I heard that on a day that I could not run pain-free, it was just got like, stuck in my head. Like, how can I give up when someone in their 70s and 80s are able to like work with like whatever their journey has been and be like to be in this place? So it was just like a beautiful moment for me. And I was like, I cannot give up now. Right? So I just like you have to stick on to the process, right? Whatever it may be, whatever system approach I take, but you cannot like you can't call it yet. So that was like very, very inspiring for me. And to just see her sprint down and like say that I can do it again on a day I wasn't ready to run. So that was mind blowing.
Amazing. Trust the process. You heard it here.
Yes.
So take me through what the past 2 years have looked like for you. What's your growth been like as a coach, as a mentor, clients you've helped? How has that impacted your life, since the expo?
So I've been like, I left my job in 2019.
Yeah.
And that was like 2014. I was working as a software business consultant. So 2012, I graduated. I started working as a consultant. So 2012 to 19, I worked as a consultant, software business consultant.
Yeah.
And 5 years of that were in London. And when my visa in London was expiring, I also knew that I wanted to be a teacher and coach by that time. Had already worked with many different teachers.
Yeah.
And we'll speak about that later.
Yeah.
And then I basically made a slow shift towards the teaching, right? So I did an internship here with Strength Camp. I actually was in Florida, but I didn't know about as much about ATG and stuff at that time. So I came to Florida, did an internship at Strength Camp. Then I got back to India. It took me like a year and a half to find my feet. And also I was also focusing on healing myself. So, but it's around like 20, I didn't even think that I would actually be someone who's going to be helping with people with their knees or like with injuries and pain.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be the guy who wanted to teach backflips and like doing these insane stuff, right? The cool shit, right?
Yeah.
But thanks to all my teachers like Paul Chek, Ben Patrick, John and everyone, they actually like, I could, like, I was inspired by that as well. Like, no, this is also like this is also cool.
Yeah.
Right. I can actually help people with their injuries, and it took me a lot of time to like come to the terms of that. So I have to thank Ben specifically because obviously the way he looked at like being like, hey, I can help people with their knees, and because I've had these challenges, and he came up with a system. So I was able to pull inspiration from what he did and like almost like replicated the way he was approaching things within India, and I started to teach in online and in-person format. So, but initial like 2019, 20 and stuff were reasonably slow, and I was also trying to figure out how would it take shape and stuff, right? And also had that MCL tear and like obviously like going into like a rabbit hole because of that and everything. But it's like after I came back 2022 is when I started to make a push strongly more in like reaching more people, and that was in the form of like workshops and stuff, right? So a lot of my work happens online. A lot of my work happens in person. I do have like select clients I work with, but one of the ways I've tried to reach people is workshops. And essentially in the last 2 years, not even the last 2 years, in 2023, in like around like say 6 months or something, I did like around 30 workshops across 5 different cities, touching almost like 300 people. And this is like also like going to 3 premier universities in the country, like engineering universities, right? And almost like 120, 125 students from those 3 universities, right? Athletes, student athletes, right? So I also worked with them, also did a corporate workshop, and also did workshops for general population across 2-3 cities.
Yeah, you were hustling. Yeah,
So
you were working hard.
It was a wave, and I just like went one after the other. And all the workshops I do are like, I tell them that it's 2 hours or 2.5 hours. It goes on for 3.
Yeah.
And usually people are appreciative of the time, of the knowledge that I share in extra. Like nobody is like, why did it was like too long? Because you're getting free information. Right. So always I like so, and I also like spend really like it's a 2-hour workshop, like it's a 2.5 hour workshop. And maybe it goes on for 3 hours. In those 3 hours, I spend around 45 minutes to explain to people when the stuff I am teaching in the workshop is not going to work. And this is because I've had my own journey with pain and injuries where I had to bring in different perspectives, like working on the diet and supplementation, working on the psycho-emotional factors, going on spiritual journeys, and these have been integral part of my healing journey. And it is important for me to frame that in that reference point that you as a human are going on this healing journey. And in that healing journey, you're also trying to heal your knees. And within that, there is a piece of the puzzle, which is this bulletproofing stuff inspired by ATG. Right? It's important for me to share that context and be like, hey, listen, this is the layer we are working on. Right? This is the piece. But this we are not working on. This we are not working on.
Right.
And sometimes if this stuff you're getting stuck, you have to be like switch layers or gears and be like, hey, this is not working. Let me work on this and then come back to that, right? And to create that framework, obviously it takes time because it took me years to understand it as well, because we think we are kind of like have our own understanding of the way the body works and stuff, and you want to be like hold on to that. But I want to lay out the playing field that, hey, you're on a healing movement journey. You have these 2 forces you can work with, movement and stillness. And then within the movement, you have this 3 perspectives that you can work with. And then within that, there is a piece of the puzzle which is bulletproofing. And this is what we're focusing on. So I spend around 45 minutes to tell them that this workshop might not work for you because there are maybe deeper things that need to be worked on. And it's important for me to lay that context. And a lot of times, maybe if I just sold them the moon by saying that, hey, these are the practices, do it. Like almost everyone after a workshop, their legs are at least not feeling worse, they're feeling better, right? So I can just leave them on a high. But I leave them on the fact that how my teachers taught me. and being like, hey, listen, this is the playing field, this is the piece of the puzzle, we're working on this as a craftsman, and maybe you need to pull in a different perspective. Sometimes you just need a surgery.
Yeah.
Right? So I try to keep it as real as possible. And maybe because of that, some people might not like it. Some people might find the workshop too easy. Some people might be like, there's a lot of talking. Some people might be like, this is too hard. I don't understand it mentally, right? But I have to put it out there, and I have to condense all of that and be like, at least sow the seed of what I think is the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
That's really good. Yeah, and it's definitely more impactful in person.
Yes.
Right. So it's like making content online, you know, it's great, but nothing beats that in-person connection. You know, getting the teacher's energy and just having like help right there on the spot. Yeah. So I think that's awesome, man. That's a really good way to spread your knowledge and your expertise. So no wonder you're successful. You know, you hustled for like a year, right?
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'm also doing workshops again this year, but much more limited. Like I'm not doing on a bigger push. And it's more like, say, maybe I'll do like 5 or 6 this year.
Yeah.
But like I just did one for dancers. And I actually was learning dance for 6 months.
Wow.
And then I did the workshop.
Right.
I integrated myself into the community, and obviously sucked at it completely in terms of the practice. And then I was like, okay, I feel ready to share this. So, and that happened about 6 months of like actually trying to dance and put myself out there on the floor. Yeah. And then I did the workshop, and it went quite well, I would say.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
That's great, man.
So maybe this time I'll do like more limited ones. Maybe one for like dance already done. There's going to be one for the surf community in Covelong near Chennai, where I live. And that's something that I've already spoken to them about. And so there's like a series of workshops I have in mind. But we'll see.
I want to know a little bit more about some of the other things you specialize in, because obviously knees is one of them, and movement is a general area, but you're very holistic minded when it comes to your training. So what are some of the other influences aside from knees over toes guy that kind of have helped you in your journey?
Sure. So, and I'm going to take names of 3 people. And the reason I'm taking the names of these 3 people is, one, I obviously deeply respect them and deeply influence them, but also they've put out a lot of educational content online, and also that is readily accessible to people, right? So there are some people who I will not name right now who have been maybe even bigger influencers, right? Yeah. But it's just that, hey, if I talk about these 3 people, let's say for example, then people can always look them up and like at least like get a dose of information, right? So, and I just want to lay that out, because there are people who have deeply affected my journey, but I'm not going to maybe name drop them in this conversation. And but I deeply respect what they've done for me, right? But these people have also influenced me very deeply, and they're very, very key influencers, right? So it's So I'll maybe share it with this way. Like in 2017, I went for a workshop. We spoke about London Real. So London Real had collaborated with Edo, and they had done a movie on Edo Portal.
Oh wow!
I don't know if you know about this. This was 2017, and they'd gone to Israel, and then they shot a movie, and that movie premiere was happening in London. And I was in London at the time, and obviously I immediately signed up for it. And basically it was the premiere on day 1, where Edo was there, and then after that on day 2 was a workshop that was run by Edo and his students, and about 100 of the people who came for the premiere or plus outside did the workshop over there, right?
Wow.
So during that time, and I'll tell you a story about Edo, please remind me later, but I'm speaking about more in context of this. After that workshop, right, obviously at that point I had chronic pain in my left shoulder, chronic pain in my right shoulder, and my right hip, like all this stuff, like, and all the time, like 17 hours a day. On top of this, like I'm supposed to have like say 2 more surgeries on my right knee.
Wow.
And obviously like I'm in pain all the time throughout the day, and like no answer nearby, right? So I went to Edo after the workshop, and I told him I have left shoulder and my left this right hip and everything, and like I'm always in pain and everything. And he said something that stayed with me. He said it's a complex problem statement, and that really allowed me to breathe a little. And I realized that I have to like pull in whoever I think is the best in the world at it. And thankfully, because of my like profession as a consultant, I had some finances that I could at least like go and consult with these people. And I was like, and it allowed me to be like, who's the best at this, like either in London or outside, and I can reach out to them and consult them and be like, what do you think about my challenges, right? So that if I'm not even able to get there, at least I know that at least I had access to the principles and perspectives, but I couldn't solve it because it was too complex or it was not up to me. Like I couldn't do it, right? It was on me. But it was not because I had lack of knowledge or understanding, right? So I made a choice, like I think looking back, not that he said that and that, but looking back, I think that was a moment where I kind of like really started thinking that I need to invest in better and better. Who's the best in this? Who's the best in this, right? So fundamentally, if you think about how I think about the puzzle, right? Because you asked me about like all these different like holistic approach that I take, is this beautiful quote from Ido, and this is how I kind of like communicate things in the workshop. He has this beautiful quote, and it's also in his documentary, Just Move documentary. He says, we are first human beings, then we are movers, and finally we are specialists. And that's the way I look at the problem solving. So in my mind, if I'm trying to problem solve for someone, we are first human beings, then we are movers, and finally specialists. And what that means is like, let's say you are a football player. The only thing that gets you better at football is playing football. The only thing that gets you better at jumping is jumping, right? But then there is a layer preceding that, which is the movement layer. That you have an ability to roll your spine, to take a breath, to shift your weight like this, right? To move your hand like this, to do this. You have these roll, jump, climb, surf. You have all these infinite combinations, and you choose to channel some of those qualities, states of being, positions and stuff into a particular specialization, whether it's football, cricket, thing. And one of the things that is the connecting thread, which is more of a movement thing, is having strong, resilient joints. Because let's say if your joints hurt, if your body hurts, like physically there is an issue, whether you don't have strong enough joints or muscles, you're either not going to be able to push yourself to the limit in the discipline, or you get injured and you have to step away from it, right? So maybe either you get plateaued or burnt out, or you end up injured, you have to step away, right? So having strong, resilient structures, right, is a movement thing, right? And the other thing which we also discuss is the fact that if I'm standing like this and there's a football coming from behind me, I need to turn, and I turn to look at like this, the eyes turn and the toe turns after, right? So this turn happens in football to look behind me and to receive a ball, happens in cricket to catch a ball, in dance if you want to reach for someone's hand, so, and also if someone calls you from behind, you just turn to look at them. So this turn that's happening, when you look at someone behind you or looking for something, that turn is common across everything, right? And if you look at a particular sport like football, let's say you make that turn, but you don't make it as efficiently as you could, right? What that means is that you're putting more stress through your joints, right? So you can make that turn extremely efficiently, extremely well calibrated, right? Where the eyes are calibrating with the head, the different body weight centers, and it's just like moving in a beautiful sequence, where every joint and every is just flowing nicely. Or you could be clunky and inefficient, right? And in that moment, you're going to get away fine. But over a period of 10 years, what's going to happen is you're either going to burn yourself to the ground in terms of like you're consuming more energy that you have to, or you're basically end up injured, or you worn out the cartilage in your knees, right? And this is again a movement thing, meaning this happens across multiple disciplines, right? So when I look at the movement realm, which is where we are working as a coach or something, this is a very lame deconstruction, and this is thanks to teachers like Ido and Paul and stuff like that. I break it down, very lame deconstruction, please don't quote me on it. I break it down into hardware and software. So one is the hardware upgrade and one is the software upgrade.
Right.
So the hardware upgrade is the bulletproofing stuff, right? Strength and conditioning, fitness, rehabilitation, calisthenics, this is all hardware. And the way I define the problem statement for myself, and this is my understanding by the way, like don't quote me on it, is that you're trying to transform the structures, meaning the strength, length, the quality and the thickness of the tissue, so that you can generate or absorb more forces in a certain position. 100%. So this is the problem statement we are trying to solve in the gym fundamentally, right? And I feel ATG does a fantastic job at that, right? It's a very potent system. You've seen results, I've seen results across students. Ben's story is also incredible, right? But it's very important to understand that that's a hardware upgrade. It's where transforming the structure so that you can generate more forces or absorb more certain position. The other side of the coin is the software optimization. So meaning, let's say today you consume 200, I'm using a tech analogy here, let's say you consume 256 GB RAM, meaning that's the strength of the structures in your knee. That's the amount of hardware in your knee. The structures are they can handle 256 GB RAM. On a good day, you consume 200. But on a day where essentially you've had a tough week, not slept well, not eaten right, your RAM usage goes to 300. That's when you end up injured or in pain, or you make a bad movement decision, or you get injured, right? So what the hardware upgrade my understanding is that we take that 256, but we try to get it up to 512,
Exactly.
an NVIDIA GeForce 9100 graphics upgrade.
Yeah.
What I mean, it is a pretty sick upgrade.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because we also strengthen the connective tissue, and we also work on concepts like structural balance, which maybe are missed out in other systems, right?
Right.
And I feel like ATG is a fantastic system for that, right? And that is what it does, meaning you have a capacity of 256, you take it to 512, so if something happens, you have a buffer. And
Right.
you're able to play in the 300 to 500 range.
Right.
But if you hit 600, you get injured as well. Shit
Right.
can happen
Right,
anytime,
right,
right?
makes sense.
But this is the bulletproofing reserve. And that's what we try to solve with the bulletproofing practice.
Right.
The other side of the coin is that today you consume 200 GB on a good day, 300 on a bad day. Can you write more efficient software? Can you change the way you move and learn to move with more ease, with more grace, transmitting force more and more efficiently so that you make the most intelligent, precise decision within yourself in terms of how you shift your weight, how your eyes work in calibration with your knees, because there is a connection.
Yeah.
Then what happens is we can bring that 200 to 300 GB to maybe 100 to 200.
Right.
So the answer, just like we spoke about the movement and the stillness perspective, is to be like A plus B. Meaning you want to have insanely strong hardware where you can generate and absorb forces. If shit happens, you have to get into a position to drive harder, to get out of, to explode, you have it. If someone comes and hits you or collides into you, you have the structures to absorb it. And at the same time, you don't have to rely on it because you are an extremely graceful mover. And
Yeah.
that is working on the software.
Right.
Right? Now I'll take this analogy, like when I speak about this in the workshops as well, like when you look at my surfing accident, I'm standing in shallow water, the board's coming like this, like in front of a car, and it came and hit me on the outside of the knee, and I could have been the most bulletproof person, and maybe 100 times out of 100, it could have hit my knee, it would have been a major MCL tear or maybe a minor MCL tear, right? But if I just knew that I saw that and I just jumped at the right moment, I would have been swept away with the board and it would have been nothing. And I
Right.
could have been the least bulletproof person. I could have been my mother who's quite healthy and bulletproof, or she's quite healthy and she's doing well for herself. But if she just knew how to jump at the right moment, that would have been a non-issue. So the answer is, in that particular moment, the answer is that you just needed better software, right? Observing that situation and responding to it, right? So
Yeah.
you could be the most bulletproof person and also end up injured, or you could be the least bulletproof person and be completely unscathed. That's the difference between hardware and software. So this major MCL tear that I had actually taught me that it was more of a software issue for me. That I could see that frame, I could see that board like 2 seconds away, but my legs were stuck.
Yeah.
Couldn't respond to it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So you want to be a ninja too.
Fair enough, that's a way
Yeah.
to look at it.
Yeah, no, I
Absolutely,
mean,
absolutely,
absolutely,
100%, right? So,
Excellence everywhere. It's the
yes,
goal.
so yes, and what I do is when in my workshops, I share this example and I explain to people, because what we are trying to get them to is to evolve, right? To be like, hey, I'm teaching you this is going to cover this piece of the problem. But you also need to learn this stuff, right? You need to actually work on the software as well.
No,
and I just put that in,
It
and there
absolutely
are
makes
practices
sense.
and systems that I use
Yeah.
which work on the software stuff.
I feel
Right.
like for athletes, that's a very good application. You know, working on your skills makes you more efficient. You know, there's boxers that jump around everywhere, you know, and they're not very efficient in their footwork, so they get tired quickly.
Yes.
Especially when you start. And then there's people that are very graceful and they practice their footwork all the time, so it's just ingrained in their brains. They don't have to think about it twice to, you know, move a certain way. So they're more efficient getting from point A to point B. So becoming a more efficient mover also helps you reduce the amount of stress that you're putting on your hardware, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right? And then working on your hardware increases the amount of stress that you can put on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's excellent when you're combining those two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from a software perspective, and like some of the best in the world, like for example, when you look at Paul Chek, we'll speak about them as well, and like Edo as well, I feel they've beautifully integrated both the software and the hardware.
Yeah.
And one of the systems I'm exploring from the software side, and I'm starting to get deeper into is this method called the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah.
And both Edo and Paul Chek, you can look them up as well. They have actually spoken very highly of Feldenkrais, and they look at Feldenkrais as one of their key influences. So
Yeah.
when you have two big shots in the field, who are basically like who are saying that no, this is potent, and they call Feldenkrais as one of their key influences, it is important to take note of that.
Yeah.
So I've been delving into the Feldenkrais method, and it's actually the exact opposite of what we try to do with all this bulletproofing
really?
stuff. Meaning that if you can do like say 15 kilos Zotman curls, what do? I try to increase it to 16 kilos. So literally, I'm trying to make movement harder for you. But the approach that we take at the software stuff is the fact that, hey, you can do this movement, but can you do it easier? Can you make it more pleasurable? Can you make it more accessible to yourself? So it's about reducing the amount of force and effort. It's a completely opposite science. You see what I mean? It's a different quality that we are training, right? So, and that for Feldenkrais is a potent system, and I'm working with an absolutely incredible human being. Her name is Vari, and she is based in Europe, and she is one of my teachers now. I've been working with her for over a year, and through online work, and when she comes to like Chennai where I live as well, we do a lot of in-person work, and I've referred almost like 30 of my students to her in the form of either like doing like single consults or doing like courses, online courses with her, and everyone has given excellent feedback. And again, it's like almost like it's making these very, very gentle movements, and the way the Feldenkrais system is kind of like structured is like it's based on the development milestones that you work on, from going from like completely a blob to becoming a boy, like a baby that can walk, right? So the different milestones that you have, where you're just lying on the floor, moving your eyes around, and then you turn the eyes and the head to look at your parents and stuff and keep crying, and then you move the eyes, head, and the shoulder, then you learn to flop over, then you start to wiggle your arms and your leg, and you get into a crawl, you butt scoot, then you come up and you start to walk for the first time with support, then you walk, then you run, and so be it, right? So that's when we write the software for the very first time, right? That's the first time we actually write our software. It's not that we got our six-pack abs at the end of it. We're still a blob. But the body now knows how to calibrate the eye with the hand. It knows how to calibrate with the eye with the toe. So all this nervous system development that happens then. And we kind of then after that, it goes on well for a few years. But then after that, what happens is we just get into like say sedentary lifestyle, specializing in a particular sport. And just like with the hardware, right, we start to develop imbalances at the software level, right? It could be because of trauma, like developmental trauma, or like trauma in the first couple of years, maybe some stress coming from there, from the family structure and stuff like that, or it could be just like lack of movement that came up after, or you had an injury or something. So just like we need to work on the hardware now to take care of our bodies, we need to take it apart and like work on it and then introduce to our sport, because now we don't move as much as we used to. The same way I feel like we need to work on software. So one of the things I like to do with my students is, once we have established a bulletproofing journey, I am like, okay, now let me bring in the software stuff. So I recommend them to consult with Vari, and I'm also like share some free lessons that Vari has offered, and be like, hey, start practicing this stuff, right? And it's a completely different quality, right? And that's also part of the journey that I work with. And it's like, if I'm trying to bring things together for people, I'm like, let me create a journey from them from bulletproofing perspective, getting the structure strong, and we know the systems we work with, and then let me work on the neurological connections, the somatic work, and teaching them the art of moving well, with more ease, with more grace, understanding posture properly, right? And I'm also learning this stuff, right? A lot of my issues happened because of software, right? The way I was perceiving things in space and time, right? And so that's also, even for me, when I look back on the way I used to play football and stuff, there was a software issue as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And how did you get into Paul's work?
So as I said, my journey, I wanted it to be around movement, but the more and more I started to go down the holistic health route. So from 2015-16 onwards, it would be like going towards rehabilitation, acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, osteopaths, like chiropractors, and everyone's trying to do their best, right? And then over a period of time, when I started to look into Paul's work, I started to see that, hey, listen, like everything that I'm trying to work on, all these systems and approaches, he has a framework for it, and he's actually thought through and experienced all of it, right? So, and then I started to look into his system and the way he was thinking about it. And when I look back into like 3-4 years of my healing journey, or even before that, I started to understand that no, like essentially these are all interconnected threads. So I started looking into Paul's work in 2017. I even like worked with a Czech practitioner. He is one of Paul's mentees. His name is Lee Brandon, and he helped me get my first breakthroughs in terms of my chronic pain in 2018 and 19. So through 2018 and like early 2019, I worked with Lee as well. And essentially that was working more on the nutrition and supplementation side of things. And essentially the work that I've done with Paul, and I've also worked with Paul like 2019 through like even now. So Paul is one person I deeply respect, and he is one person I would definitely call as my mentor. I've been very lucky to have spent like a good amount of time in person with him, consulting for myself, like troubleshooting myself. And the reason for I went to Paul was that he was someone, obviously is insanely strong, like has an incredible physique and stuff, right? But at the same time, He's talking about yoga. He's talking about nutrition and supplementation, organic food. He's also talking about like shamanism and ayahuasca ceremonies and like meditations and like also like say giving you practices to work on narratives. All of these things like I'd worked on independently. Like you sometimes start to journal a little bit, right? Sometimes you like start to like just like look at the sun for a little while. Sometimes you practice some stillness. Sometimes you like go to a rehab specialist, right? So when I looked at what Paul has done is he's taken these different disciplines and he has basically been like, what is the connecting thread? Like if someone is in crisis and trying to move to a state of thriving, that's the holistic health, that's the healing journey. And within that, you have these different disciplines you can go to. You can go to a liver specialist, or you can go to a strength and conditioning coach, or you can like journal, or you can go to an acupuncture person, you can go to a shaman, to like basically just like all these different possibilities that you have. There's a connecting thread between that, right? There are strategies, overarching principles and stuff, right? I felt like when I experientially, when I looked at the work, the way Paul tried to organize the material, I could be like, he's on point.
Yeah.
So, and when I actually took a few things and worked on it, it helped me really get my first breakthrough with my chronic pain. Like for example, thanks to Paul's diet recommendations in terms of like to cut certain foods out, like I was like pain-free in terms of the chronic pain I had from 2014 to 19.
Yeah.
The first time in those 5 years, I didn't have pain and I would actually like be able to like train.
That's amazing.
Like I can assure you before 2019, and I worked with some of the best physios and including like teachers like Ben and stuff like that. Before 2019, the amount of pain I had and the kind of issues that I had, no system would have worked because the physical was not the issue.
Right.
It was the physiology, it was the psyche, right?
Yeah.
So out of the 12 hours in person that I've spent with Paul, and Paul's not a cheap date, I've spent probably 11 and a half hours. And I'm a person who has physical challenges, right? Chronic pain in shoulders and knees. Spent 11 and a half hours talking about narratives, belief systems, religion, God. And I think his work on that is like underrated. Like people don't understand the work level he works at. It's like almost like you work at the level of the psyche. It's like you have some issues in the physical, but you have a wrinkle in the psyche, and the moment you fix that, everything trickles through. So like how does something, some conflict in the psyche flow down to the physical into health problems, or how does alignment in the psyche flow down to a state of physical well-being, like in this reality, is I think the heart of like Paul's work, right? And that's the work that I've tried to do with Paul, is to understand the good questions to ask at that level and take on some practices for that level, and it's kind of like the intangible.
100%.
Yeah.
Very cool. What are some things that you would apply from those mentors? Like,
so one of them, Paul highly recommended me to work on with. He pointed me to Feldenkrais. He told me to look into that, and so that is something that obviously I've integrated. And apart from that, he actually mentioned one time in one of our last consult, he said that if you just practiced stillness 1 minute 20 times a day, I think you're going to be okay. I just hold still for like 1 minute, and I took it to heart, and I've done like several like structured routines of like doing 20 minutes 20 times like 1 minute, microdosing it and stuff, right? I think he said something like, if you spend just 20 times a day, just hold still for a minute, I think you're going to be fine or something. So that's something that he gave me as well. And I think a lot of it is to, as I said, he's someone I deeply respect because he's also looked into religion and belief systems, and try to understand how that can create conflicts at a deep level. Yeah. Right. So obviously we can work with narratives and like conflict resolution at a psycho-emotional level. There are things we are aware of and kind of aware of, and you can work at that level. But then the energetic practices are really working on the deeper stuff. Right. So people like Paul Chek and Sadhguru have been like, help me understand how to work at that energetic level. Yeah. Right. Makes sense. So, and one of the ways I teach that is through the stillness. Right. Be like, okay, let's at least have something that works on that level. Yeah. Right. So to come back to that thing, we said we are first human beings, and then we are movers, and finally we are specialists. The human layer, if the human is broken, it affects the way we move. And if that affects the way you surf. Yeah. Right? So if you work on the human layer, it can unlock everything. That's kind of like the heart of it of the work with Paul.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? And I'll take a few examples to explain this. The first one is like Cristiano Ronaldo, and don't like nitpick on the details. I'm just trying to share an overarching principle. Like Cristiano Ronaldo is obviously the best in the world, like one of the best in the world, right? But if you see a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, he went on a little bit of a downward spiral, right? Where he had a parting of ways with Manchester United. People are saying he's done completely and all of this stuff, right? And he also spoke out like publicly about Manchester United. It was falling apart. Then he moved to El Nasser, and even the first season El Nasser, he didn't do much. And essentially, people obviously make judgment about it on social media and stuff, as people make judgment about everything. But what people don't realize is that he and his partner, they were expecting twins in that particular time, around that time, and one of them didn't make it. Now that's gut-wrenching for a human being.
Yeah.
For someone at that level who performed in the top 5, top 10 at that time, the fact that they're even able to perform at like a top 30 level is a testimony to their professionalism. Most people would be completely shattered to the bone.
Yeah,
like they would be
100%.
done.
Yeah.
Another example, I'm sure you're into martial arts and stuff. Khabib Nurmagomedov, or someone Nurmagomedov is someone is obviously like a absolutely elite professional, and he had an incredible streak, right? Undefeated, 29-0, maybe like lost one round arguably, and he was the champion finally. And then during COVID, he's the best in the game. His father passed away. And then he has a long conversation with his mother and say that I don't want to fight anymore. He fights one more fight and retires at the end of his peak of his career. Like, you know how good he is. Like, no one came close to beating him, and he could have just stuck on, fought once every 6 months, and he would have, even if I'd fought like say 4 or 5 times over 2 years, nobody could question his legacy.
Right.
But now people are like, he didn't fight long enough, like this and all this and stuff. But something had shifted in as a human that he didn't want to do it anymore. Michael Jordan, like best in the game, I think he won 3 championships. Suddenly his father passed away, was killed in a freak accident, right? A situation, right? I saw this in the documentary. And then he walked away and he basically picked up baseball. Why was he playing baseball for 2 years? Because he used to play catch with his father. And he had an emotional connection with that.
Yeah.
And then he basically eventually made it back to basketball. And then he won 3 more championships.
Right.
And obviously he's the greatest of all times, and the rest is history.
Right.
But this is someone at the peak of their career. When something happened, they moved. And finally, even if you look at Ronda Rousey, she was undefeated throughout her career, and then she had this one loss that she could not come back from, and then she slowly tried to make a comeback. She couldn't, and she gravitated to WWE. Right?
Yeah.
And these are 4 people at the peak of their careers, like top of the game, like not like world class. But when something shifted, or something was wounded in them as a human, see the change in movement. One person is like going from top 5 to like top 30. One person is retiring from the sport at the peak of their careers, right? Some person is switching disciplines, right? See the change in movement, right? And we think that what's happening in our heads doesn't have an effect on the way we move, or cannot cause knee pain. Of course it does.
Of course, yeah.
Like I can tell you.
It's a really good explanation of it. Yeah.
I can tell you, like there have been situations like where I should be going to play football, or I should be like going to the gym and working out, but some situation, some girl I dated, some argument with her, instead of going towards the football field, I'm driving towards her house. Like, why are you doing this, that, and everything? Oh, blah, 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 nonsense, right? But see the change in movement. I'm supposed to be doing drills, and here I'm basically sitting in a car with her. See the change in physical movement. And then we expect that what's happening within ourselves and the way we work at the level of the psyche and the psycho-emotional aspects doesn't have an effect.
Yeah.
We are not robots.
No.
We are human beings. And sometimes something deeper has to heal first before our knees can heal.
Yeah.
Right? The human needs to heal first sometimes so that the mover can heal and so that you can express yourself. And the same way it goes the other way as well.
Exactly,
If the human is aligned, if you understand your core values, your belief systems, right? What you say no to, what you say yes to, you resolve conflicts with people who are close and dear to you, you are very honest in the way you live life, then the way you express yourself through movement is going to be profound. And the way you're going to then express yourself in your discipline is also going to be something unique, right? And I would say that Ben is a perfect example of this, right? I keep telling people who know Ben Patrick, a lot of times the people who talk to me, like who have reached out to me thanks to Ben, and I tell them that Ben is a great example for this, right? Obviously, he's gone through major trials as a human being, as someone, in context of their knees, they have like a plastic meniscus or something, like 3 surgeries at the age of like 17, 18 and stuff, like it should be done by then. But he has pulled something together and he created a system and stuff, and he came up with this incredible system, right, of like progressing, regressing and something. but he also is healing himself as a human in parallel. We don't see those aspects. So I'm sure he might have had conflicts with his partner, with the way he wanted to bring up his kids, religion, God. I'm just seeing from the outside. Like, I don't know parts of his personal life, but I'm saying he has worked on those things, which have like resolved, taken away all the heaviness, so that he can channel deeply into the healing journey, is my view on things. So one of the things I try to keep observing Ben is like, hey, you can learn from Ben as the way he's living his life as well. I'm not saying he's perfect, but he is trying to live it true to who he is, what his core values are, right? What he wants to create, and he's very intentional in that. And that has contributed to his healing journey, because he as a human being is aligned. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with him or not, he's aligned. And if he's aligned, he's able to channel something deeper. And if you have more and more conflicts over here, as a human, that creates a sense of heaviness.
Yes.
Right?
100%,
so a lot of the work I've tried to work on the side, and I'm not saying I've gotten like hit some spot or anything, but I realized the part that why did I consciously or unconsciously destroy myself is because me as a human was wounded. And this was a way for me to feel things, to like express myself, or like to show to the world, whatever it is, right? There was an energy there, and you have to maybe sometimes work on that energy and change that and shift that, and then you as a mover can heal, and your knees can heal, and then you can like start to express yourself again.
1000%. A lot of it is self-sabotage, you know. For me, it was the same way. Like, I didn't feel good inside, and I was kind of like drinking and doing all these things to, one, ignore the pain, and two, just kind of hide away from the present moment, right, from reality. And these are all things that are connected 1000%, because like and people, you know, might take this the wrong way, but a lot of the times your physical appearance reflects what's actually going on inside, you know, in the mind and your heart. And as much as people hate to see it, like, hear it, like, it's not just genetics either. Like, a lot of the time it is how you are inside, like your inner world reflects your outer world a lot of the times, right? And I can say that because I've had that transformation as well. You know, when I was unhealthy at 23, I was also mentally unhealthy. I was also spiritually ill. And working on the physical first, like you said, it goes both ways, actually helped me to eventually work on the mental and the spiritual. Because it led, you know, exercise is one of the best things you can do for your mental health, right? So movement, being a specialist as well, one of the best things you can do for your mental and spiritual health as a human, because it gives you a little bit of a sense of purpose, and it connects you to movement, and it connects you to healthier habits, and it snowballs, and eventually you start working in the deeper aspects of yourself. So whether you start with the mental and the spiritual, or whether you start with the movement, just working on becoming a better version of yourself is going to lead to improvements everywhere.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And it's just wanted to add that flavor, because for me, I couldn't work on things physically, so I had to like step back, like come back to physiology. And then I had to come into like aspects of my life that I didn't really want to work. And then that's where the work really started, right? And the other way is to like kind of like work on the physical, ride that wave, that positive energy, and work on other aspects, right? I was more taken in the other direction, where I could not work on the physical, where any form of movement would hurt. So then you will start to troubleshoot at the physiological level. You start to troubleshoot at a psycho-emotional level. You start to troubleshoot at a spiritual level, working at an energy level, right? So, and then those are all independent journeys, right? And I think, as you said, it's like you can start anywhere. You can start anywhere you want, right? All of this connects to it all. But I like to think that overarching framework is we're humans first, and movers and specialists. And even in my workshops and stuff, like, why am I teaching the bulletproofing? I'm teaching the bulletproofing because it's like people can relate to it, it's actionable. And if you can see results with that, why do you need to go deeper? But if it's not working, at least you have something to work with. Right? You can work on the software.
I think it's going to evolve too, because like you mentioned, you wanted to be an acrobat. You know, you wanted to do all these cool stuff, right? And you're integrating it even more with all the movement things that you're learning, and the mentorship with the lady you mentioned. I forgot her name. I'm sorry. Avadi. So like maybe it'll lead you down that path, who knows? But your hero's journey kind of started with a wish, right? A wish just to be out of pain. And that led you, as a boy, you made this wish, and that led you to become the man who was able to solve that problem. And here you are now solving that problem for other people. I think that's beautiful, man. So with ATG, What do you want to talk about with ATG? You mentioned you wanted to talk more about them. I think that it's just a beginning, right? And I think that it's a very powerful group that's gaining, like you said, Ben is leading by example, and he's already solved problems for millions of people. I think he's only going to keep growing his businesses, and I wish him the very best. But as a group, I think we're just getting started. You know, like there's people that have very powerful stories like yourself, and people everywhere that are helping in their own way, you know, whether it's small or big, but we're all trying to make the world a better place. I think it's gained so much popularity recently that it's only going to get better because we're just now getting pressure, you know, from people on the internet, little haters and so on. I think that's all good because it forces us to be even better, to be more clear in the message and to deliver more value to viewers, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what Ben has done is truly, and I'm saying this like just my interpretation of things, right? I think he has transformed the way I look at fitness, right?
Yeah.
So I look at it as that the way I explain this whole bulletproofing stuff is that the bulletproofing stuff, and obviously I use the term bulletproofing, but obviously it's heavily inspired by ATG and the work that we do here, is I just say that bulletproofing is just a gimmicky marketing term. And I just say that it's just a better way of maybe approaching fitness, your rehab, your strength training, and it's like connecting the threads there and be like, what are the good things in all of these things and put it together into a cohesive system and approach and take like fundamental principles and practices from there, right?
Yeah.
I think the toolkit that we have in terms of movement with ATG is like absolutely fantastic. If you just look at something like the lower back, you're like, say, obviously there are things that you could be doing at all these different levels, but if you look at the toolkit we have, you have like, say, you can start off with the back extension, you have the Romanian deadlift, you have seated good mornings, you have the glute ham raise, right? And you can work on the left and the right separately, you can do single leg work, you have the QL, and then you have like the hip flexor work. And even before you get to the lower back, you're also working on your feet, ankle, knees, and hips and trying to balance them out with each other.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very well-rounded approach you're taking. Is it going to work for everyone? No. Your lower back pain can also come from gut issues. If you have, like, say, gut dysbiosis, or you have some kind of a lower intestine issue, that will show up as lower back pain. But is that going to address that? Absolutely not. But if you're looking at working at the level of the structures, I think it's a very, very well-rounded and well-thought-through system. The way you can regress each movement and make it accessible is very much in line with physiotherapy. Right? You work at a level that doesn't hurt, right? We call it regressing a movement, and you wait till the adaptation happens and you progress from there, right? So it's I think a very, very well-thought-through system, and I've never seen ATG as a certification. I've seen Ben as a teacher and a guide and a friend and a mentor, right? I've seen the community as something I'm part of, and I'm on a journey with people, right? And we are trying to work on it on the inside as well. And we also know what limitations we have as a community, right? And I'm also aware of what it offers me, what it does not offer me, where I need to bring something else in. And this is why Ben created the whole coaches community, right? Is the fact that every coach can have their own skill set, right? And be like, hey, I'm the person who maybe like works with maybe a slightly more holistic approach. I work with people with more complex knee injuries and stuff like that, whereas someone else could be helping someone jump higher, right? And like they take ATG more on the performance side. So there are people who are bringing in different perspectives and working on it as a craftsman, right? And the connecting thread is that ties us together is all these practices and the community vibe and all this stuff together, right? So I have had an incredible journey with ATG. I've seen good results with myself. It took time though, and it took a craftsmanship approach of being like chipping away at things as opposed to like a 6-week rehab or a 3-month rehab and you do it and you don't have to think about things again. It's not the approach we've taken. It's more like let's chip away at things. Let's try to create adaptation at a structural level, at a neurological level, at a somatic level, and we work at the level that doesn't hurt. We work from there. We're trying to like work on things from a more of first principle of how the body moves as opposed to what a symptom or pain produces. So for example, even if I had someone came to me with lower back pain, it sounds funny, but I'll make them strengthen their feet and ankle. Why wouldn't I? Because I'm not trying to nitpick on the lower back. It's not a lower back protocol. It's like, how do you build a general bulletproofing ability in someone's body? Right? And yes, you can have very, very potent, like, attack a particular issue, but the way I'm trying to solve a lower back issue for someone versus a knee issue for someone is not to nitpick on that detail. If I were to nitpick in terms of symptoms in my knees, I could not even start working with something, because if you see the diagnosis perspective, you have an MCL tear which is major, you have like multiple dislocations in the deep knee bend position. How do you even start? Like what study are you going to pull from? Right? You have to be like, what doesn't hurt? What feels right? What is the general way of the body works?
Right.
What are the ranges that don't hurt?
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense to get the feet and ankles stronger.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense to get the tips stronger than just below the knee. Maybe it
hips
doesn't
more
connect to the
flexible.
knee. It's fine. Right? Let's work on that. Right? It's more of working with that perspective. Right? And maybe some of those things don't directly connect. And that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I feel as coaches, we could do a better job at communicating those things. And that's just the nature of social media.
Well, that's why we need more podcasts, and why we need more YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And I think, and why Ben encourages people to use Twitter, because it's much easier to explain yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas on Instagram, and I'm the guiltiest. I've only focused on Instagram and shorts and things like that, but I'm trying to put out more long form content. That's why we're here, because I really want to, like, people like you that have a powerful story and this brilliant perspective on it need more avenues to express themselves, and you're not going to get that in a 60-second video.
Exactly.
You would have to be like amazingly sharp at it and have like a team of people around you to like cut everything into these tiny little pieces.
Even if you did, it's almost like I just think to myself, it's like almost like if you create a video, you should just fill up all the comments that come up as arguments to begin with. Like you do, even before someone posts it, you just post the comment yourself, because you kind of you know what people are going to say, because you're trying to like condense, and you have a certain like focus of that video, and you know all the attack vectors. So might as well fire off the comments yourself. You see what I mean? And it's again like I think, but the aspect of context is very important. But it's very hard to communicate that through social media. And also, I would also say that we also there are things that we could have done better in the social media space as well as the community. I'm just being very transparent here. Meaning that there are some pieces of content which could have been of a higher quality 100%. In terms of communication and stuff, right? Maybe it's like we've simplified it too much, or maybe it's not pointing towards the truth, right? So that is just part of having a big community of people who are working together, and maybe I've also fallen prey to it maybe in some occasions, right? I've not actually posted much on social media. I've only have like 50 posts or something, so I haven't not like reached out as much as I could or put out as much content. But I'm aware of these things, that the fact that these things are happening, and it's just one of those things, like how long are you going to just keep looking at it from the outside and just point fingers? At some point you have to be like, hey, I'm part of this, let me work on this on the inside. How can you improve something from the inside? And the community has been incredibly supportive to me, and maybe I got 70% of the answers there. Maybe 30% I did not get. Maybe 30% I did not even went against me. And that's with any system or approach, right? There are things that Paul Chek taught me that did not work for me. You see what I mean? And that's a rabbit hole I went down. But when you're working with people at that level, even if you take a wrong turn, it is a worthwhile exploration, because these people have worked with extremely complex cases.
Yes.
You see what I mean? So I rather go wrong with them. Right? And one thing I would like to add here is that there's a lot of talk about studies and stuff, right? About the fact that there's not enough studies and everything. And I can tell you honestly that my understanding of anatomy is not top notch. And I don't mean to justify what I'm going to say next, or justify this by what I'm going to say next. I'm saying, like, we are coaches, maybe we work with the strength and conditioning perspective or something. Like, maybe we know anatomy, maybe we don't. A dancer also can teach another dancer, and they can put a dancer into much more complex positions in a moment of time than we ever puts anyone through strength and conditioning, and they have zero understanding of anatomy. You see what I mean? So there is a difference between moving and having it's not that you're cutting someone open. So the way I work with people is I work with a craftsmanship approach. Like literally, like we're trying to adapt this. This is the force. This is the angle. This hurts. This doesn't hurt. Let's work at this thing right now, and it will unlock something for you. Right? You chip away at it like a craftsman. Like you're trying to like put something together. Right? And with that approach, essentially, it's like if you get stuck, you can always consult someone who's a specialist. Right? I don't even pretend to know it all. Right? There are situations where I've hit an impasse and I've consulted with other people. So you can like mitigate some of these like lack of understanding and stuff, or somewhere when you do need a study, you can like work with other professionals. This is why this is how you get the win.
Exactly.
Right? And also, like if you take my journey with multiple surgeries, someone who's a very well respected surgeon in India refused to operate on me. Someone else who's also very well respected surgeon, they said it can be done. Both of them have studied the work deeply, and both of them came to two different conclusions.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I see,
And
yeah.
so like what studies do you go by? Who do you go by? You have to pick
You have to be
something
your
and go
own.
with it.
You can be your own study too.
Exactly, exactly, right? And when things hit a certain complexity, and if you're able to step back and be agnostic and be like, hey, this is a complex enough case. If I learn what the first principles are from there, and I take it and I understand those principles, and I can work those principles again with other people, and then fill up the understanding. You see what I mean? And that's what I try to do with people like Ben, with people like Paul Chek. It's like, Ben solved this. Like, he's someone who shouldn't be able to dunk. How did he do it? Why? And that's why I came to him in the first place. Why? That's why thousands of people have come to him, right? It's because they're like, how the hell did he do this after this much trauma on the knee?
Yeah, bro.
How is he able to squat deep after this much trauma on the knee?
Right.
And that's what drew me to him, and he has done that.
We got to get to Duncan too.
Yeah,
Right?
I got like pretty humbled, like getting to like study under these people who are like absolutely world-class jumpers.
Yeah, freaks.
Right?
Connor.
Insane.
with
Oh
the
my God.
Like a
Absolutely
40, 50 inch
insane.
vertical. And it's really, I mean, it's humbly just working out with them, you know,
Yeah.
like all of them. But it's just a testament to the system. It's a testament to their work ethic.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring. And that's the great thing about being around this community of people who strive to be better. It's like it makes you realize how far you have to go. But it
Yeah.
motivates, right? It motivates because everybody's super like nice and like, hey, you know, like I can show you how to get there.
Yes.
And they do.
Yes.
You know? So we
Absolutely.
just- we gotta
And
get there,
it's insane to see like someone like Connor. I've shared his story with a lot of people. Is he's someone who didn't have much of knee issues.
Yeah.
And he took the same system and the principles and he took it to jumping higher.
Yeah.
And he's a clear case study of like taking someone who relatively was not in pain, but they managed to get a breakthrough in terms of their jumping ability, right?
Yeah.
And like I took the same system and I work on it more from rehabilitation and healing. I was able to get myself to a place where I can surf, climb, and dance 2 hours a day, all on the same day.
Yeah.
And my knees are okay now. Whereas 3-4 years ago they couldn't. And I know every single movement I've done and not done, every single choice I've made or not made, and I can tell you ATG is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things I keep explaining to people. Is like I'm trying to also dissolve this thing and saying thing that rehab you go to this guy, strength and conditioning you go to this guy, peak performance you go to this guy, fitness you go to this guy. No, it's like it's just one process. You're trying to upgrade the structures.
Yeah.
Right. And what is the connecting thread? The connecting thread is the movements and the principles. And if you understood that connecting thread, you just keep working at higher and higher levels.
Exactly. Yep. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people find you? You know, do you have a website? What are some of your plans for the future?
So right now, obviously, I'm here. I think Ben's going to be in town tomorrow.
Yeah.
So next 3-4 days are going to be absolutely insane. There's
Yeah.
a lot of live workouts planned. Then I'm going to head back to India. There are a few students of mine I'm working with very closely. I have a peak performance student, and they're a very well-respected entrepreneur. And I basically blocked out a lot of my coaching slots to work with them, and they're also mentoring me. And they had like cartilage wear out in their knees after playing badminton. And last 7 months in terms of in-person coaching, they've been in singular point of focus, right? I just basically like stopped everything, put my online coaching and social media pretty much on like maintenance, and I was like, okay, I need to like work on them. And obviously, they are back playing badminton now, so they thought we need a breakthrough, and absolutely love the sled.
Great.
So obviously, when I go back there, I'm going to like continue diving deeper into that work with them, and that's going to be the heart of the in-person work. Apart from that, maybe like 1 or 2 people I'll take on as
Yeah.
students. There's another student I'm working with, and he has had 3 knee surgeries, just like me.
Wow.
Failed ACL, then had a surgery, and then fundamentally like, so once I get back there, I'm just going to continue working on that. Do plan to do like more selective workshops through this year. I'm based in Chennai, India, and then obviously I'm trying to put out more content online. Through my Instagram, through potentially YouTube, and now that you mentioned like X, and I think these are things that I want to work on. And so my Instagram is Phoenix Connections. I'm always associated with the Phoenix of the death and rebirth experience, part of the hero's journey.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Right. So that's where the name comes from. And so that I'm accessible through Instagram, and if someone is like reaches out to you and they need to speak to me directly, you can just share my WhatsApp number with them.
Absolutely.
And we can get on a call.
Yeah.
And yeah, just want to share that I'm very, very grateful to the time you've given me right
course,
now,
brother,
and
yeah.
for listening so curiously and being so present. I also want to learn more from your journey. Has been absolutely incredible as well. So you just
brother.
like put the spotlight on me, but I should be also putting the spotlight on me, you. And I'm also very, very grateful for people who have trusted me on the journeys, right? People who have come to my workshops, people who have done, like actually my students, my parents as well. I'm very grateful for the people who have trusted me and supported me, and also to my teachers, right? One thing I want to pause by stop by saying is that we've kind of like forgotten what mentorship is all about, right?
Yeah.
We obviously think in terms of like, yeah, I need to go for a class, I need to do my rehab on all this stuff, but I would highly invite people to think of journeys as like going internships, mentorships, right?
Yeah.
And you're learning, and the focus being on education and understanding things more deeply,
Yeah.
right? So I'm very, very grateful to my mentors and teachers for kind of like a lot of the way I teach, the way I communicate is thanks to them. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, just feeling very appreciative, and it's nice to share my story because this is not the story that's going on in my head. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
When like life goes by, you kind of like get caught in the bubble that you are,
Yeah.
right? So being able to like get out of all of that to share, okay, this is maybe also what I'm about,
Yeah.
is quite humbling. So thank you so much for
Absolutely, brother. My pleasure, man. Looking forward to hanging out with you this weekend, and this is what it's all about, the connections that you make. And I'm sure we'll stay in contact even when you return.
that. Absolutely, man. And you always have a home in India. So
Thank you,
just
brother.
come by,
Appreciate
and it'll
it.
be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks,
brother.
man.
Yeah, thank you.
See you.
Oh, yeah.
It was what it